just so everybody's aware, I did go live a little earlier today. Something was up with the stream.
Thank you.
Justin, how are you feeling?
Oh, like I got hit by a semi.
Oh,
It just comes and goes.
it will for a little bit.
Carla, did you get all your smell and taste back?
I did. It was gone for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
My son's got it right now, and he's just starting. His 10 days will be up Thursday. And he said, I just want to taste coffee again.
So I didn't lose my sense of taste until about day 8.
Okay, that was his trigger when he couldn't smell his shower gel or that, and he's like, "Oh no!" And then he went down and made coffee, get ready to go to work, and he couldn't taste his coffee. I think that is what has depressed him the most. He misses his coffee. He loves that taste.
I think that's what bothered my kids the most. I guess that when I made the buffalo chicken dip and I couldn't taste it, I knew there was a problem because usually I have to drink a gallon of water with it. So
There you go. There you go.
Just add ketchup, Carla. You'll taste everything after that. and Bebe, mozzarella sticks, you start packaging those out and freezing them so we can buy them after hours.
Then you wouldn't be able to come in and tip my servers.
You know.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Barberton City Council. Today is February 22nd, 2021. This is the committee meetings. After the committee meetings, we'll go into the committee of the whole meetings. So first committee up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Hyden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call to order City Properties, Parks, and Recreation. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021. It is 6 p.m. We are all virtual. All members of the committee are present. All members of the council are present, plus noted guests. We have no new requests for legislation. And miscellaneous discussion, I'll open it up to the committee first. Councilors Daber, Coburn, anything?
I have nothing.
Mr. Hyden, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Any updates on the skate park yet? It's been about 3-4 weeks now. We've been delaying that and hearing more and more stuff. I don't know if you can get a hold of Mr. Tracy about that.
Mr. Tracy, I see is on. Any comments, Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, there's no new updates since last week's meeting, mainly because the utilities crews that are doing the investigations down there are going to do the investigations down there have just been swamped with emergency work. They are in for 23 hours straight this weekend, so there's just been a lot going on. Well, I think with the warming temperatures this week, we'll have more luck to get out there and do some of the investigative work that we need to do.
I appreciate that, Mr. Tracy. Just a reminder, there's a couple of local businesses who want to donate to the skate park. And just in some businesses, sometimes the money's there extra. Then next week something might come up, it might be gone. So I just want to see if we can try to step that up so we can get these donations from these businesses before something else comes up. I'd hate to lose a nice amount of donations from a couple of local businesses in town. Thank you.
Councilor Angelov?
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Yes. What is the cost of building this skate?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Can you hear me?
There. Were you asking the cost of building the skate park?
Really? Yes. What is the cost of building the skate park?
I believe the cost estimate was anywhere from 100 to
Someone had,
100,000. Is that correct, Director Tracy or Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, it's approximately $150,000.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
okay. And is that going to be built on donations?
There are some donations lined up, yes, and I do believe that it would have to be fully funded. I don't believe in the budget this year there would be any extra for that, given the state of the city right now.
Exactly. I just was wondering if the foundation was putting any money into it, or if the city is, or if it's going to be totally funded by donations, like the turf. I was just wondering that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. I believe that once Director Tracy can investigate everything and see what's underneath there, then we can move forward with looking for financing. But the problem is, if there's different lines, different everything underneath, it may prove impossible to be at that location. Am I correct, Director Tracy?
No, it's by no means impossible. We just want to make sure that we have the exact locations of the utilities and make sure that everything is on the maps is actually what is there as far as the size, the location, the condition, if there's anything private versus public. We just have to go through all that stuff to make sure that we know all the information before we move forward. I think the utilities that are there now wouldn't hinder, something moving forward. It just may impact the planning part of it.
Councilman Heidig?
Yes, Mayor.
Could we get a list of businesses and their donation amount for the skate park? That'll help us with planning.
Certainly can. Thanks, President.
Yeah, I got a question for Mr. Tracy. Have they looked into what the insurance will be? That was the problem last time we were working on this. The cost of the insurance was really high, and I wonder if they kind of looked into that yet.
I haven't been involved on that side of things. Planning has been doing all that. So as far as the insurance and the costs and everything with that goes, I'm not certain. Stacy's been working on that a lot because she was involved with the one previously. So yeah, I couldn't give you an answer on that with any confidence.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I can check on the insurance. This is Patterson, the Parks and Rec director. I can follow up on that for you all.
Director Patterson, thank you very much. Is there anything else from anyone?
Yeah, this is Doherty. I'd like to do a sound check, please.
Yes, Director. I've got you loud and clear there.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Yep. Hearing nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
And I will second that, sir.
Thank you, and we are adjourned at 6:06.
Thank you very much. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevitt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 6:07 p.m. All are virtual via GoToMeeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all other council members and all others noted. We have a couple of requests for legislation this evening. The first request is a request from the law director, and it's to enter into contract with Oriana House. We use Oriana House to provide confinement and alcohol rehabilitation for adult males and females and for adult nonviolent misdemeanor offenders. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. I don't know who was the first. I apologize.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Greer
I'll second.
and second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that. Next legislation is has been requested by Mr. Greer. Section 630, gambling in general of the Barberton codified ordinances. This is Mr. Greer has attached some of the changes that he is proposing. This was brought to my attention and Mr. Greer's attention by Councilman Jaber. A facility in his ward reached out to him and wanted to possibly see a proposal to increase hours of operation from our current legislation. And of course, in the spirit of compromise, we felt as if an increase in license fee would potentially be appropriate. Mr. Greer, would you like to, or Mr. Jaber, both of you worked, you know, Mr. Jaber, you started the process. Mr. Greer took the second route and or the second leg, and I took the third leg and invited Mr. Surgeon here this evening, who happens to be the owner of one of the facilities here in town.
Yeah, I mean, I could touch just overview kind of what you just did, but I can just do an overview of what we have here, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
So this is actually two amendments to two sections of 630, and which deals with gambling in general here in the city of Barberton. Currently, 630.04 relates to license fees that entertainment arcade establishments have to pay per machine that they have. Currently, it's set at $200, and the proposal is to increase that to $500. And that is a biannual fee per machine that they have. The second portion of this is the closing hours portion, and deals with how the entertainment arcade establishments, the hours of operation. Now, before, the hours of operation really just stated closing time, and it said that the closing time, that they couldn't operate between 11 p.m. and 10 a.m. on the next day. So the way that things were brought to my attention from Mr. Jaber, we rewrote that section of hours operation to propose the idea of allowing an entertainment device arcade to operate basically within the same confines of a normal business. So we have 8 a.m. through 12 a.m. Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. through 2 a.m. on Friday, or Friday through Saturday, and 8 a.m. through 1 p.m. So we just kind of like reversed it. The original legislation just said you couldn't operate, that these establishments couldn't operate within a certain time frame. We opened it and added a little bit more flexibility to on days to give them a little bit more room to breathe. And again, that was a compromise, or just something that everyone kind of felt was fair, given that we were also looking to increase the fees per machine. And there was some process that went back, and we can go further, but I guess, Chair, do we want to talk about some of the other information the steps that we took to bring more?
Yeah. So first I want to preface preface the conversation by letting everyone know that we collected $47,400 for the entertainment devices here in the city of Barberton last year, of which 25,800 was from Treasure Island and 21,600 was from Magic Money. So currently we have 2 skilled gaming device arcades here in the city, and those are the 2. Mr. Greer and I had a conversation, and we felt the first order of business was to reach out to the police chief and see if this would put a strain on our safety forces. And Chief was kind enough to send us all police reports generated from both of those locations. Unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult to disseminate between what actually occurs at those establishments and what doesn't, because Treasure Island, for perspective, is on the bend there that's not very good bend there on Worcester Road, and there are a lot of accidents and cars pulled over and things. And so if that's the closest location, that's the address that gets assigned. Same with Magic Money. Magic Money is in the shopping center on Worcester Road, and so any call made to the shopping center also gets attached to the shopping center. So that was one step that we took. Mr. Greer, do you have additional information to add?
I guess I could. There is one other piece. The fee increase for these individual arcade devices would increase the revenue from around 47,400 to upwards of around 80 to 85. I would imagine. That's just an estimate based on current number of machines that are registered. That could change a little bit, obviously, but that would increase for a total revenue of probably, safe to say, above 80,000, right around $80,000.
Okay, and I think when we talk about the hours that we have proposed here, we were looking at them as if similar to bar hours, correct?
Correct.
So I'm going to open it up now to any council members that have any questions. And then, of course, Mr. Griffin's sitting over there nice and quiet. He's on our committee. I apologize. So we're going to start by letting Mr. Griffin speak.
Madam Chair, thank you. What's the hours and the fees on machines for other municipalities around the area? Do we have any comparison?
I believe Mr. Greer.
Yeah, I did have that. I'm going to defer to Councilman Jaber on that. But I did have it in hand at one point for the city of Norton, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. The fees for Norton is $500. I'm pretty sure it went up about 5-6 years ago. And so we've been slacking on that. We should have jumped on board 5 years ago. You figure 48,000 times 5-6 years, we missed out on a lot of money we could have accomplished and could have took into the city. And then Mr. Surgeon, also Tim, he also owns the one in Norton himself. And that's the one called the Pyramid. I'm sorry. Can you talk more about that, please? And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Pretty much what you had spoke about earlier, 8 to 12, 8 to 2 on Friday and Saturday. And then I believe it's noon to midnight on Sunday, I believe.
I think what we have proposed here is actually 8 a.m. every day of the week for beginning time. That's what's proposed in this draft, with ending time of midnight. I'm sorry, on Monday through Thursday, 2:30 a.m. I'm sorry. No. Wait a minute. I have to read this again. Hours of 8 a.m. Okay, so Monday through Thursday would be 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. So 8 to midnight. Friday and Saturday, what is proposed is 8 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. And then Sundays would be 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And that's just what's been proposed. Of course, this has not received any input from any other council members other than Mr. Greer and myself, so and Mr. Jaber. So before you talk about it, can we just entertain questions from council members? And Mr. Surgeon, by all means, if you have a better answer than Mr. Greer or myself or Mr. Jaber have, please feel free to interject and answer. Okay. So
Mrs. Debevic?
Yes.
When you're finished with council, I would like to, I have a couple questions once everyone's had a chance.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Doherty. Okay, so Mr. Griffin, I'm going to return to you to make sure that you don't have any other questions. Mr. Griffin.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I had my mic up.
Just go back to you.
No, that was my only concern right now was what's going on in other communities around Barberton and what's the average. And, I want to make sure that we are in the ballpark, so.
Okay.
Could I interject?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Greer.
Sorry. Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to just state that while we talk about this, and we've mentioned this before, this is not geared towards a single business. This is geared openly as legislation across the board. And we're lucky enough to have an owner here to help explain the process. But I just wanted to point that out, that this wasn't written for specific business, although we only have 2 of them. It was written for the entire city.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Chair Mrs. Debevic. I just want to know if anybody on your committee has touched base with the planning department, because currently we have a resolution for a moratorium on these devices and used cars and whatnot that was just passed in November. And the resolution reads that the planning staff asked to review the tax and fees associated with the various types of businesses and would allow proper time to review the codified ordinances. And this is something since last fall that I have been working with the planning department on raising the fees, changing the fee structure and the date and the times that they're open and whatnot. So we do have a resolution. It is a moratorium for any new ones coming in, but part of that is rewriting that section that includes the fees and zoning and whatnot. Mr. Hunt, if you're available, do you have anything to say with that? Apparently he's not. But I just wanted, that is something that planning had asked, and that.
So I would like to just say that
you hear me?
I would like to just respond that I was under the impression that the moratorium was for new businesses. So that's why I didn't consult with planning. But
well, it is, but that. You want to change 2 right now, and the whole legislation, allowable uses, is going to be changed. I think Mr. Hunt's on now. If you wouldn't mind, Chairperson, that he might say a few words.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
I was just going to say that we have not been in conversation. We do understand there's quite a bit to study here as it pertains to not only the price of the machines, but also the hours in operation. So we would be in favor of raising the fees, but this is something we haven't had a chance to delve into in great detail yet, but we'd welcome that.
Okay, I guess what I want to add and maybe provide, I know that lots of councilmen want to speak, but what I may want to add, I believe that Mr. Surgeon approached Mr. Jaber because, you know, obviously the businesses have taken a hit as a result of COVID and closure, just as every business in the community has. And so increasing the hours of operation would, you know, increase his revenue perhaps back up to what it was before COVID times. So I think that is, you know, what brought this piece of legislation about. Am I correct, Mr. Surgeon?
Absolutely, yes. And then we were, other than COVID, the governor had shut our hours down like everybody else, and so then we were opening earlier. We did not realize that we've been open longer hours than we're in the legislation. We didn't even realize those hours were in there, honestly. So since you guys came in, the police came in a couple of weeks ago, told us the times we were allowed to be open. We came back down. We've seen a dramatic, on top of the other hours lost. We've seen from 100 to 180 customers per day to 30 to 50 customers per day. That's 30 or 60 to 70% decrease in customers and about the same in revenue. So there's a huge swing in our business. I didn't know the city's only during the week. Any business is only allowed to be open until midnight.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No. I think that I don't believe that that's a correct statement.
Okay, I thought you said that was somebody had said something that was standard business in Barberton, that these hours were pretty much what every business has to.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Because I would like to be open 24 hours if we could, but if we could talk about that, I'd welcome that.
So let's see, Mrs. Fry, I know you were patiently waiting with your hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Dubevik. The question that I had for Mr. Surgeon pertains to the fact that you do have an establishment in Norton. And this came up about the fees, that we really don't charge enough fees. This came up months and months ago. And if you could tell me, because I don't have my article handy, but I know that they collected fees per machine at a much more frequent time than the city of Barberton did. I think the city of Barberton just did it once a year or once every 6 months. And I might be wrong about this, but I thought that in Norton, the fees were paid monthly.
No,
and
they're paid every 6 months in both cities, the same day, January and June, or December 30th and June 30th, I believe is when they're due. And you each have a $1,000 a year licensing fee on top of the machine fee. Both cities have that. They're neck and neck that way. You guys are just half as much on the biannual fee.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have two questions. The first question is, the money that we get for licensing fees and from machine fees, where does it go?
General fund.
All of that goes to the general fund. That's not earmarked for safety or for anything, any special revenue funds?
I don't believe so. Mr. Flaker, can you add to that? Am I correct? It goes to the general fund?
Yeah, all the money that we receive for the entertainment devices gets deposited into the general fund.
Thank you. And my second question with the hours, and this may seem kind of silly, but besides sitting in a chair, what is the difference between pushing buttons and playing a video game or standing inside a gas station or convenience store and scratching lottery tickets, playing Keno, and just basically standing there? Is there much of a difference at all with this? Thank you.
Is that
I would
question? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think he was probably just posing a general question. I would.
It's just a general thought there that
I would agree.
In essence, I could keep my restaurant open because I have lottery 24 hours a day. And if somebody walks in, say I'm only selling lottery tickets, and could theoretically have people sitting at my bar playing Keno up till 4 a.m. when their cutoff is, and at the same time playing scratch offs all night long. So I just wanted to put that general thought out there. Thank you.
Ms. DeBevick,
Yes, sir.
I walked around the neighborhood. I think you did also, didn't you?
I stopped at a few houses. Yes.
Right. Was there any concerns from the neighbors or any questions or any complaints from the establishments?
No, I didn't receive any.
I also did not receive any. I did have one neighbor was appreciative of them being open because they would go in there and get free pizza or free drinks because they also give out free drinks and free pizza to their customers. And this gentleman was, you can say he's homeless. He lives in a house, an abandoned house, and he goes in there and just eats for free and drinks for free. So it's
Just for clarification there, that's non-alcoholic beverages.
Correct.
Yes.
Not alcoholic, all chips, pop. Again, when one of the owners came up to me and asked me for this, the first thing I did was reach out to Mrs. Lisa Miller. And Lisa Miller did an awesome job. She pointed me in the right direction, and I reached out to Mr. Councilman Greer and also Ms. DeVevick. And I gave you guys the facts, and I think we did our job with this and seeing that this would be great for the city for the increase. I mean, you figure $48,000, that's huge. We can use that general fund for another employee or even for the street department if we can try to push towards the street department and get these an extra employee for the street guys. And like I said, there was no complaints from any neighbors, no complaints from any other businesses. And I had one city employee ask me if I was affiliated with this, and I told him no. I have no ties with any of these businesses or any ties with any of these people. They came up to me as a councilman, and we went further with that. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I want to piggyback on Mrs. Angeloff's comment and a really appreciated remark about the moratorium and that you are in the process of exploring and doing, and Mr. Hunt added about doing research regarding these types of businesses. I guess I would just say that any legislation that we would decide on or pass can always be altered. And if this provides these two businesses the opportunity to at least get some of their business back, I think that we should absolutely consider this while the planning portion of it is continuing, because it can always be adjusted. So, Mrs. Doherty, I'm sorry, one more minute, Mrs. Doherty. Mr. Heidick has his hand up. He has one more question, I guess.
Thank you, Chair. Director Hunt, speaking with that moratorium and exploring the legislation already on the books there, do you have a time frame of when the skilled gaming one would be completed?
Councilman, I don't know if you can hear me. My video just turned on, I think. I'm having problems with it. There we go. We are currently studying a wholesale change to our development code. So we're waiting to hear back from the state of Ohio on some grant funding that we've applied for. I have not heard back on that regard, but it's a priority here. I have a list of priorities in my office. That is obviously not only a priority, but something that we have to address here this year. So we're down an employee right now, not making excuses, but we are doing our best to keep our head above water here and keep the ship sailing. So more to come there.
Because my concern is if these are due on, I'm sorry, Mr. Surgeon, did you say June 30th?
Wait, June 30th, yes.
Then if we are strongly considering this, if those changes aren't brought to us by then, we could miss the boat on the June 30th payment. Thank you, Chair.
I guess I would also add, some other consideration is I know that the payment was made December 30th for the first half of 2021. I'm guessing based on Mr. Surgeon's comment. With that being said, if we were to move forward with this and pass this, it would pass well before June. Would we, would we prorate and collect additional money from the time of passage? That would be something that we would have to look at.
If they're paying it forward, then I would assume then the June 30th deadline would be to pay for the second half of the year. So if we were to pass it before then, wouldn't we be good to go?
Right, but if we would extend the hours, would we require? So
I hear what you're saying. My problem with that would be we have to make the money first to pay it. So
okay.
But I'd still consider it if we could do it.
Mrs. Coburn, go ahead.
That was going to be my point, is their whole purpose for this was to attempt to get back where they were. So I would say we should wait.
I was thinking from the city mindset for a second.
Yeah. Well, I would think that they would need to have this 6 months.
It would really help.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Gordon, I've let you wait long enough. I apologize.
No, I appreciate that. I have a couple of questions, and the first one is for Mr. Jaber. What other cities close to Barberton have this type of gambling operation besides Norton? Is Copley, Fairlawn, Akron?
That was something you might ask Mrs. He's the planning committee, or Mr. Trevor Hunt.
Okay, so you don't know of any others, because I don't know of any others. Do you?
No, ma'am, unless they do.
Okay. All right, so then that would perhaps give us an even greater influx of people between those hours, especially when the bars are open till 2:30, and it competes with bar, I'll call it traffic. So not necessarily vehicular traffic, but people out and about and alcohol going on and then these businesses. And then there was a question posed about sitting in a bar. I don't really know what you were getting at, Mr. Heidig, but regardless, that when you talk about a convenience store or a gas station back in the late 80s, I don't know, I'm sure Barberton did this too, where you have to close at a certain hour, and you have to have either bulletproof glass or some sort of protection for if you've only got one employee inside, and you have to be able to see inside your signage. I'm sure you're aware of these regulations, Mr. Jaber. So you have to be able to see inside so that you can make sure that your clerks are safe and people are safe. Of course, not every business can be like that. Convenience stores are legislated that way, but I don't know about, the Green Diamond, for instance. So I don't know that all businesses are legislated that way. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're not. So that's just, I guess, commentary. The other issue or question I have is for Mr. Surgeon. Could you tell me the average age of the person, if you can just give it a ballpark, of the person that comes into your locations?
60.
Yeah, and that would be average, correct?
Yeah, I'm probably.
So you're going to have some 40-year-olds and some 80-year-olds, right?
20-year-olds and some 90-year-olds, yes.
Right. Okay, so I guess those are the ones I'm concerned about. Again, we can't be everybody's keeper, but it's the older folks that I get the phone call about. People often believe that the store or the gambling place in Norton is actually in Barberton, and of course it isn't. So I've gotten phone calls about someone's grandfather continually going in there and losing his savings, and I have to refer them to Norton. And that's just another commentary. And then another commentary I would have is if we're going to compare data, I think the data we should be looking at would be Norton's data for police calls, because if I heard you right, they're already open from 8 a.m. until 2 or 2:30 a.m. Is that correct or no?
Till 2 on the weekends.
Okay, and then there's the bar right up the street, the Wing Warehouse or some kind of a wing joint up the street. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So these numbers we'd have to look at, I think, should be apples to apples. But I mean, those are just my thoughts and things. Food for thought. That's it. And that's I'm finished. Thank you.
We do have security.
I was just going to ask you, as far as
are they private security? They're not armed. Is that correct?
No, they're not armed.
Okay, but you do have security inside.
Yes, we have a doorman.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
And this also goes back to Mrs. Doherty. You said more traffic and more people in the area from bars. That's what our police force is for, Mrs. Doherty. If something does happen, that's citations. That citation becomes fees and stuff for courts. So it's more money for the city again. Again, we're trying to get more income for the city. With this being extra hours would help the city.
The focus of a police department, Mr. Jaber, with all due respect, is not to be a revenue maker. Thank you.
Obviously, it's not, because sometimes I see them parked for the same location for 3 hours, Mrs. Doherty. That's something we definitely need to work on, too. That's a different subject. But again, we're here to improve the city, you know?
That's a cheap shot.
Yeah, I appreciate. And also, who was that?
Said that's not I don't believe that at all, Mr. Jaber.
Okay, well, you probably see some different things. I've had a couple constituents and a couple residents take pictures of a police car sitting in the same location for about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours. Again, that's a different subject. I'm just going off and piggyback what Mrs. Doherty said about more traffic and more situations. Again, this is the revenue of over $48,000 that the city could use. Again, it could go to our street department. We need another employee in the street department. We need more revenue with that. And we can also get more new equipment for the street department. And we need to improve the streets. And the only way we can improve the streets is with more income through the general fund. And right now, we need it. You got to get old equipment, needs replaced. There's just more income that we need. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Surgeon how many employees he has.
Accounting. Sorry, I should have information. I believe 7 or 8. We're back down to 5. I believe right now we're at 5.
So 2 are laid off.
Yes.
Okay, and are the 5 that you have, are they full-time employees?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, we've backed down on the food that we purchased from the restaurants in the area. Everything. It's just a snowball effect. Every little thing of our business affects everybody else's business too. Gas stations, right on down to everything. It just it snowballs. I still don't understand. We were open before COVID hit. We're open for the last 5 years for 24 hours a day, and we never had any really issues or anything. It was out of our own ignorance that we didn't realize that this was even part of the legislation, that we were supposed to be closed. And we haven't had any problems. So I don't understand why we even have set hours. I didn't understand that once they brought that to my attention 2 weeks ago. I don't understand why.
So, just for clarification, have you been open have you started adhering to the set hours in the order?
100%, yes. 100%, yes. I don't know why it just came up all of a sudden, because we were open before COVID for 3-4 years, 24 hours a day with no problems. I think maybe it was competition or something, maybe said something. I'm not sure, but we didn't have it. What I'm trying to get at is we didn't have any issues then. Why do we even have hours that we're only allowed to be open? Why is it us? We don't serve alcohol. probably take care of people more than anything in there. I don't understand why we're even restricted. It's my main question, I guess, for you guys.
And also just to, I know Mr. Heidick has a question, but just to provide me with some information, because I did not have an opportunity to ask you, what exactly vetting do you have to go through the state to, I'm sure that there's.
Well, I've had an application
with the city.
I'm sorry. You have to have a full background test check. You can't have any prior felonies or any kind of arrests. Your employees cannot have any prior felonies or arrests. They have all their names, phone numbers, address. The state does.
So are you registered with the state then, or do you?
No, I am registered with the state. I have, we have for 2 years had our application process being gone over by the state. We still don't have any answers from them, but yes, we're just waiting. So.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Heidick, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My question for Mr. Surgeon and for basically any of these places, you're constantly citing COVID and food. Are you required to obtain a food service license from the county health department, which would add another layer of inspections of compliance with COVID rules and regulations? And if not, are you frequented by the Ohio Investigative Unit to ensure proper sanitation, proper everything? Thank you.
To answer your question, we do not sell any of the food or beverages. It's free, so we are not held under the health department rules, although the health department has came in several times. They've been in recently probably 4 or 5 times over the last 6 months. We are following all their rules. We've not had anything citations or anything against us. Anything they've asked, we put the plexiglass dividers up. Yeah, we're following their rules 100%.
With the consideration of extended hours, I just wanted to make sure that there was somebody looking to see if safety measures are in place. Thank you.
Chief, do you have anything that you want to add?
Sure. Yeah, we the list I sent with the calls, it's not that hard to discern. We have had issues, not even out of the norm, but and it wasn't always 24/7. And this came to light from patrol when they were watching for some other activity in that area. So just because they're parked doesn't mean they're not working. We've also taken calls over the phone in this pandemic world, and we can do a lot of stuff from our office as well, which is our cars 24/7. So, and hours were always put in by this council way back when the gambling stuff came in. So that's all I got to say. You can read those things and make your own decision. And I would say visit them all, at 9 o'clock on a Saturday or Friday night and see what you think. So thank you.
Mr. Vivek?
Yes.
I've been a resident of Barberton over 8-9 years now. When I would frequent Taco Bell at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning for the last 4 or 5 years, I'd drive by that establishment and I would see it open. So it's been open for the last 5 years, at least 4 or 5 years, for over 24 hours. So I don't know why it was never proposed or nobody's ever went to knock on the door 4 years ago or 3 years ago, 2 years ago. This is just something new. Again, it's just a business in my ward that I care about. I want to see profit, especially with everything with COVID right now going on. Businesses are hurting, especially small businesses. And Mr. Surgeon, he's not just the business owner of this business. I'm pretty sure he's got other businesses that he takes care of and he owns personally. So he's a businessman. He knows how hard it is to be a small mom and pop shop. And this is definitely a small mom and pop shop. He's hurting right now. So we're just trying to improve his business. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess what I would like to do is ask all council members to email me or Mr. Greer or Mr. Griffin or all three of us any additional questions or concerns that you may have. I have Mr. Surgeon's contact, and anything that I cannot answer, I will find the answer for. Obviously, because of COVID, we don't, if we are going to consider this as a whole, as a body, I'm a proponent of 3 readings, so it's lengthy to be passed. I don't know if my committee is willing to call for it while we discuss, so at least it can be read. Or would you prefer for it to be on matters referred?
I would like to call for this piece of legislation and then use the 3 readings and expedite the process with planning to make sure that we get their input, because that is very important with that moratorium going on.
I agree.
Obviously, they have some type of idea in the direction that they want to go, so they'll be able to provide more insightful feedback, and we can always change on the go. If 3 readings is good for the residents, it's good for the planning department.
Okay, I agree. I would like to, Mrs. Doherty brought up a good point. I would like to look at other area communities. I did not have an opportunity to do that, so that is something that I will look at as well. Mr. Morber, I am going to put my mask on and I'm going to visit, but I don't gamble, so I won't be gambling, but I will be visiting the locations. Does anybody else have any other feedback? Mr. Griffin? Oh,
you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm sorry about the 3 readings. The 3 readings would be fine, so we can get more public input and everything else. But I'd like to ask one question. When you were 24 hours a day, what was the reason that we dropped back to the other hours? Why?
Because we didn't realize that's what the legislation had said before. The police came in. I don't know why. They said they had complaints, so they came in and told us we had to abide by these hours, and that was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we have 100%, and that's it.
Okay, so you were operating illegally for 24 hours. You didn't know.
Yes.
The regular hours. I have. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Breaking the law. I didn't know it though.
Well, you know what they say about that, don't you?
I know. Ignorance doesn't. I know.
Okay. So do I have so we agree as a committee that this would go 3 readings to allow for input and any visitation from any council members that may want to, and any additional research that anyone may want to do.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for this piece of legislation.
Motion, Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
Second, Mrs. DeBevick.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Surgeon, I appreciate, I extended an invitation to you because I was certain that people would have questions that we would probably not be able to answer. I appreciate you attending this evening, but you don't have to stay. So feel free to exit our fund.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Okay. Any miscellaneous discussion for safety? Yes, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch base and see if there's any more information and some other information about the idea of possibly looking into moving the scrapping of cars over to auction and trying that. I did request the last 2 years of sales receipts from the scrapping of cars the current process that we use. So we do have that information. I did forward that to the committee, I believe. And forgive me, I forget if I even send it to the rest of council, but I have the information and we can send it all to council. But I was hoping we can further our discussion on that possibility of looking into the idea of maybe utilizing an auction aspect. I do know, I wasn't at the meeting, unfortunately, but I do know that there was a meeting held between the mayor, an auction location or auction site, and Mr. Jaber. So I was just wanting to get more information about what happened, where we're at, and maybe we can toss around some numbers that we got back from safety in regards to sales receipts.
Okay. I'm not certain that I've seen the sales receipts, but I did receive an email that had, I guess it was a blanket type contract that someone it was from, I'm sorry, who Kiko or? Kiko. I apologize for
Kiko. Yeah.
Kiko. Okay. And so I was also unable to attend, and I did send an email to the gentleman from Kiko and others that were going to attend. So I don't know if Mr. Jaber or Mayor have any information to provide about how the meeting went and what he felt possibly they could do for us to help increase revenue in that area.
I'll go ahead and let Mr. Mayor answer that. But just a quick review. He came in and gave us some numbers, and we also discussed future, even items we can use Kiko auction as, even real estate or even desks or chairs. But they would do the cars, and they would do a contract per auction, and anything over a certain amount would be a percentage. And through the percentage to where we did some calculations, I think we still would increase it by at least 25 to 40% of what we're getting right now. A couple examples that we got in the email. One example was Ordinance number 10, 2019. We had 24 vehicles sold for $2,200. I mean, if you go over all these ordinances, all these numbers, we're averaging only how much, Mr. Greer? About $91, $92 per car.
About $100 if all those cars were actually sold in a batch. Now there is some that are not sold. They're returned or picked up by but generally speaking, the numbers and the dollar amount from the sales receipts comes out to right around $100 per car.
And talking to Mr. Ames from Kiko, he said those numbers should not be that low. It should be much, much higher. And like I said, we'll try. We should try them out for one time and see how it goes. It's nothing set in stone. It's one contract, one per auction. I mean, I would like to see the revenue again increase. If we'd make extra $3,000-4,000 per auction, times that by 12, I mean, it's $36,000 to $40,000 extra a year. Again, they can pay off one police cruiser we can purchase, or hire another part-time police officer. I mean, the money could be used wisely. It all adds up. I don't know, Mr. Mayor is on still.
So I just have a question. So would it not entail, because last week Chief indicated that it would, we obviously don't have the manpower, but this would not really take any of our manpower, would it?
Correct. Kiko would do everything hands-on. They would do a disclaimer. We wouldn't touch nothing. All they need us to do is open the gates on Saturday, and that way the cars would be spread up, and the people who win the auction would come up and pick up the cars themselves. The city of Barberton would have no employees needed. Again, besides the one person opening the door there, the gate, from Mr. Ames told me. And I think Mr. Mayor's on too. If he can, he might answer the questions.
Yeah, so there would be some increased cost on our side, and we'd have to take a look at this. We do use GovDeals. We do have in the past performed our own auctions at the site, and then we sell directly to scrap. So this could be another tool kind of in our disposal of assets toolbox, if you will. So the procedure is to send the contract to the law department, which has happened. They'll review it. This will be kind of a blanket contract, and then they need a separate new contract for every auction. The difficulty is, we're not the size city that has an auction every quarter or every month, or there's no consistency. So that makes it a little difficult when there's lead time from an auction house like this, where they need 5 or 6 weeks. There's some challenges there. It's not the be all end all, but it's something that we could use in the future. And Mr. Ames even said that different outlets are better for different types of assets, if you will. So they do some things, but we've used GovDeals with a lot of success in the past. We've done our own in-house auctions with our own staff. So keeping expenses low and making sure we're making the best decisions is the best move. So like I said, this is another possibility in our tool in our toolbox when it comes to disposing assets.
Thanks. Mayor, I have a question. You mentioned GovDeals and other outlets. I noticed as I was perusing the budget that where it said GovDeals as revenues, there was nothing listed for last year or this year as
Correct.
far as revenue. Does that get listed somewhere else? Does it not go into, I guess I'm not sure how we can tell based on the budget where the revenues generated actually fall from selling items.
So it's my understanding that the money would go into the general fund. So I don't know if you could tell me what page I could look at. That's on the revenue side or not, but it would go in the general fund. And I'm not sure if we used GovDeals last year. So
yeah, it didn't show anything for the last several years. I will find the page. I may have already marked it down because I actually had a question about that. So I will find that and let you know. I'm not going to take any more of your time right now to look for that. So
well, it's my understanding we did sell an old fire vehicle on GovDeals last year. So I can talk to Mr. Flaker and see where that's at. Maybe that went back into just the general fund. I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Mrs. Fry? You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I had a couple questions for Vince, if he would be so kind as to answer them. I wanted to know if all these cars in the tow yard actually have titles, because that is a requirement for the Kiko to even be able to sell them.
Carol, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. No, they don't. What we do, we follow Ohio Revised Code, the disposal, and we assign them. And so it has to go to a scrap or, dealer, tow company, salver. Joe Schmo off the street can't come in and say, hey, that's a cool looking, Chevy Cruze. I want to buy that, and bid on it. It doesn't work like that. So
that's what I thought.
Right.
Another question.
Titles, and we don't have titles. So.
Okay. That was one of the questions. And then another one was, do all these vehicles even start? Are you able to start them?
We don't know. We don't have keys for most of them. I mean, we would never guarantee any mechanicals or any of that. So what you see is what you get, as is where is. So.
Well, that's another problem. Then a third problem that I saw from this is the fact that they require that we advertise, and in quite a few places, which is something that we don't have. We don't have to do that at the present time. And if these cars didn't start or whatever when they were auctioned off, what would happen? Would they be towed somewhere?
Yeah, they would expect they'd be towed out. I mean, but we're always open to look at doing it, better. I'm not saying that, but there are, rules that we work within and constraints. At the end of the day, like Mrs. Doherty said before, we are not a for-profit police department. We do the best we can. We cover our expenses with towing because we've taken control of it. Had a good conversation with Councilman Greer about that, before. So, and we never want to be seen as policing for profit. We tow for legal reasons. The fees that we charge are set by council and ordinance. People will come in, you guys are ripping us off and you're making all this money. It's like, we don't set any of these. We're competitive. We follow what we know what the market goes for, both in the fees and the storage and the scrap. So that's
right. All. Okay, thank you very much, Chief Morgan.
Mrs. Angela, go ahead. You're muted.
Chair, I have one question here on this contract. It says commission schedule, sale price each item, $0 to $50. I would say that Kiko gets a 35%, $50 to $500, 30%. Now that says each item. What are the price of? I mean, who marks the price of these cars, or if they auction them off? $50 to $500, that's a big gap in between. Say the car's only worth $75, it looks as though their commission would be 30%, and that would be for each item. I think that commission schedule is a little high if Chief Morbert was talking about no keys, no titles, and some of them don't even start. If they're only worth $0 to $50, they get 35%. It just seems a little high there.
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that.
I'm not a car guru by any stretch of the imagination, but what I would guess, if the cars are in the condition that Chief is indicating, I would guess that maybe different tow yards or junk yards would purchase them for a little higher price, depending on the parts that are on them. So it wouldn't. Exactly. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just making an assumption, and that probably isn't smart of me. I don't know.
Well, I'm just going to put in the ballpark figure that $50 to $499.99. Their commission is 30%.
So if I haven't seen the numbers that Mr. Greer is indicating, but if we received $2,200 for 22 vehicles, we got $100 a vehicle. So I would say that if we sold a vehicle for $40 or $400 because of its parts, and I don't know, I'm just doing math here, we would owe them $120. We would have increased the amount that we made by $280, correct? Or am I doing the math wrong? I mean, and I'm just using I haven't seen any number.
I'm just looking at the commission's schedule. It says sell price each item, and it breaks it down on what their commission is.
Right.
I'm just looking at it.
But it can't. The reason that it's like that is because I'm sure that in an auction people bid, so they don't know if that vehicle is going to sell for $50 or $400. When you auction something, I am of the opinion when you auction something, you run the risk of potentially losing money. Do I think that $100 a car is pretty cheap? Yes. I mean, I think, one part off of that car is worth $100. The only reason that I would be a proponent of this, maybe once, is first of all, it would not, we aren't making a lot of money anyway to begin with. So we wouldn't have really anything to lose. I mean, when you're talking about $2,200 total in revenue, I mean, we're probably going to generate that, I would think. I would think that it would average out. I mean, and we don't have to do any of the work. So that's the other part. If it would require any of the citizens to do, or any of our employees to do any of the work, I would say we just don't have the manpower to do that.
Auction is the way to go.
If it was, it wasn't much.
I would just like to say that before 2014, we made zero off of this. Okay.
No, I
think we've been doing pretty good if you go back and look at all that, since we took control of the process.
So. Right. No, I completely concur. But if we can take that, 2,200 and make it 3,200, I mean, we're only moving forward. But we don't know that can happen. So, I guess just the discussion has to be had. I'm sorry, Mrs. Coburn has her hand up. I can't see very well. So, yeah, Mrs. Coburn.
This is also a $1,500 per auction advertising bill up front, per his paperwork, and it's only every 6 weeks. He can't do it monthly. Said it would take him 6 weeks to set it up, per the paperwork we received from him. So it's not a monthly increase.
We don't do it monthly anyway, do we, Chief?
That's what Mr. Jabers was saying. It's more per month, but we wouldn't be able to do a monthly one if he's talking 6 weeks, is all I was pointing out.
Yeah. It is.
I believe it's every couple months or whenever we have about between 20 and 30 vehicles, correct, Chief?
I'm sorry, Mr. DeBevick. I had some feedback here. What was that?
Oh, that's okay. I said, I believe as far as the timeliness of it, it's when we have about 20 or 30 vehicles, right? We don't have that time schedule that we do it.
No,
when our yard gets full and we need to unload, then we do it, correct?
Right. Yeah, and we follow the statutory requirements per the Ohio Revised Code too. And we make sure people have enough time to get it out if they want. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, we have that. Okay, Mr. Heidick, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, when we do scrap these cars, whatever company we basically give them to there, is it possible that they could be taking possession of them, getting salvage titles, and reselling them?
They could. Yep. What they do with them after, as a salver or scrapper, what they do with them after that is, that's how they make money. So, too, which I understand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Bevick, question for Chief. Chief, how do you guys decide who has the highest bid? I've looked at the receipts for the last two years. I've seen just one company. What was the company again, Mr. Greer? I don't have my notes in front of me.
All Ohio Recovery.
Are they local?
Yeah, that's also known as Hooker's Towing.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah. Officer Simpson looks at the price of scrap for a total car, and he figures in what it would cost to have somebody else come and tow it out as well. And Hooker's has come out ahead, local business that he felt, gives the best price. When you consider that in.
Does he have that in paper where they have the best price, or how does that work? Does he call, get emails? Does he get messages, or how does he decide how the best price is?
My understanding, Dan checks the the boards and stuff like that. You can call up to Hazel Street and the different places and around, and
he does that every time.
Scrap prices.
Scrap market.
Yeah, he knows what the scrap market is going for.
Does he do that every time, or how's that work? Does he call, or does he reach out to different scrap yards, or just
the ones? If he calls every single time, or if he, knows scrap has been fairly consistently low here lately as well.
So you do not know the answer about that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. My phone's messing up. Does he call, or does he have information or email, or you don't know?
I don't know how he does it, but I know he keeps up on it.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Greer, Mr. Greer, do you have anything else for this topic of conversation? I think that aren't going to solve.
Yeah, there was a lot of good questions. I'm not an expert in this by any means. However, I did work as a repo man and at an auction yard for a couple years. So I am familiar with how the auction works. I am familiar with the auction the cut that they take. 35% is a little high, but I think it's given the type of auction it is. The auctions I dealt with were right around like 3%, but that was because they knew that they could come back every once a month and do it, and it was a long-term contract, and there was multiple, hundreds of cars. I will say this, and I would like to see the process laid out on how we go about choosing what companies. I don't know. I looked at the numbers, and I don't know what the individual cost is, but I will say, as being in the industry, $100 is way under market, way under market. Like, you're talking $250 like minimum for one of these cars, and they come and pick them up. So I do see that there is some room. I would think that there's some room for there's wiggle room. But I do get, like Mrs. Angeloff said, that the 35, you don't know what it's going to sell for. I've been down to the yard, and I want to thank Chief for taking me down there and showing me around. Some cars were decent. I was walking around with the Chief, and I said, we walked past it was like a 2016-ish Ford Focus, and I looked down, I was like, Chief, that headlight, just because it's who I am, that headlight's worth $400. But the car was bad. But we also got to keep in mind that these auctions are not for people to come and drive them off. These are for scrap yards and salvage yards to come and auction. Normal people are not buying these cars, and they're equipped.
Yeah, and that's kind of where they're getting $100 off of one part.
Yeah,
maybe two parts, and you go to several different parts, they're getting a lot more off of sales. So
the sale of these cars at these low prices, and I get it, the city is not a scrap yard, right? We're not in the business of scrapping cars for top dollar. However, I do think there is some wiggle room. People will buy these cars, especially that Ford Focus that I was looking at, for $1,000, and to just chuck that up for scrap prices all the time. I do think that it could benefit us by looking and using an auction, as long as the numbers are good, and 30% is pretty high. But if the cars are selling for $400, $300, $400, and they're doing all the work, I don't see why we shouldn't look at it as a viable tool in the kit that we have, like the mayor said. So.
Okay.
Well, that percentage is not set in stone either, though. That can be negotiated. So,
that Mr. Peter, who's that? Hello?
That was Mr. Patterson.
Yes. You did that in Canton, didn't you? You're in Canton, sir?
Pardon me?
Were you guys doing auctions in Canton when you were in there, city of Canton?
Yeah. Pretty much everywhere I've worked at, we've auctioned off everything.
And did you get good revenue in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than what's going on right now. I have to say that. At least, no knock on anything, but there's those guys, they get money off all the parts. So worst case scenario, it'll go to a scrap yard, but there's people out here that want vehicles and need vehicles and need things. I mean, so we could do a lot better, or at least try it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, I appreciate everyone's feedback and conversation. I think this is a conversation that we need to continue to have with the, economic situation that the city's in. I think that we have to explore all viable options to increase revenue. So I think that, we can continue this conversation. I've well extended my 30-minute safety committee limit. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
You're adjourned at, I don't even know what it is, 7:18.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Rules Marketing Development with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call this meeting to order. Today, February 22nd, we are meeting virtual. All members present and all others noted. Tonight, we have no requests for legislation, but we do have matters of discussion. I think this was brought up before. I'm just going to go over it if anyone else wants to come in on it or say what they want to say, miscellaneous discussion. Procedures submitted by Mr. Heidick, the receipt and readings of letters, emails, and the process of doing this at full council meetings, voice, audio, video recordings, and messages is how people participate in virtual meetings. Such proceedings need to be published and made ready, available to the public. Does anyone want to weigh in on this? I think Mr. Heidick already sent us a letter here stating the directions we can go, the call for this, which it looks pretty good. If everybody else has read it, does anyone want to say anything about that? Yes, Mrs. DeBevick?
I just think it's important moving forward, and I had a conversation with Mr. Heidick about this. I offered some input. That this is a great starting point, but this shouldn't be the end goal. We have a platform in which we can allow people to attend. I don't know what our limit is for GoToMeeting, but I mean, we know realistically how many people generally attend our council meetings. So as we proceed forward and get this underway, I would like to see it expand to allow public to also meet if they would like to discuss something. So
Okay.
that's the only input that I have.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. As Councilor DeBevick stated, this would be what we have in front of us would be phase one. Phase two would be interaction. We just need to get a handle on how we're taking in messages currently, what our procedure is going to be. Once we have that solidified, then our next step will be to move to interactive calls, video podiums, virtual podiums. But we definitely need to get these things set, because as it stands now, by accepting emails, if the clerk or if the president or if a chairman reads them, the message itself could go well over 10 minutes reading, and we really don't have any stopgap to put these things in place, or if somebody wants to call and leave a message. So I do believe that this would be the first step. If everybody's okay with this, once we put it in, then the next step is building upon this to how we interact.
Okay, that's fine. This would just be a starting point, more or less, to get us out of the gates to doing this, right? Okay.
Correct. And I've spoken with the clerk on the mechanics of this, of how her voice calls would go to a voicemail that she could just press a button through her extension. It would play through her email, different timings, different everything, with the website where it would be posted that citizen could click on, basically as a one-stop shop to put any letters in, put anything in. This is the simple way first. And then once we get the simple way done, then we move in to the next phase of having people for committee meetings and the whole nine.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Laura, she would do all the reading of the emails and everything. No council people would be involved in emails or nothing. She would do it all. Am I correct? Okay.
That would be between the clerk and the president. If the president were to decide that some letters should be read in a committee and not, if it'd be more appropriate for a committee, the president's always has language in here that the president could, at his leisure, sign it.
Okay.
I think I could be the clearinghouse where the gate, and I could disperse it at that point as soon as we have a method. As long as we keep in line with the sunshine laws and how, they have certain standards to that, as long as our methods are okay with them, we should be fine.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Medges, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. It says that the letters have to be in by 12 noon on Monday. I think that should go back to Friday, because at noon, the clerk's not even here. She comes in on Mondays from 8 to like 11:30, and she comes back at 4. So she wouldn't even know if someone,
put a late one in. Yeah.
If someone brought it in, let's say even at noon, she wouldn't be here. So, I think that should go back to Friday.
Okay. Mr. DeBevick?
My problem with that is that we don't even get our legislation until Thursday. And so how is the public supposed to have less than 24 hours to garner questions or comments about legislation? I actually proposed to Mr. Heidick that I wanted to see that extended past the lunch hour till maybe 1-ish. And he talked me off the cliff. So from my viewpoint, as it stands before COVID, before we were meeting in this manner, we could be in a committee meeting and people could be attending our meeting and join in or ask a question based on the discussion we were having. So this is still a very limiting option. And I think moving it back until Friday, just clearly you might as well say that they can't comment because they don't even know what the legislation is.
Okay. Mrs. Fry, your hand up.
Thank you. I was wondering, this is starting out as an email thing, but have you looked into what Akron is doing, which is a voicemail system, and they have a line designated for that, and the clerk can take the messages off of the email and play them, and then you could do it until 4 o'clock or whatever on the night of the meeting, and we could still hear what people have to say, rather than, because some people don't even email, but almost everybody does voicemail. Yes. So why can't you do that? Just call somebody in and see how they're doing it.
Okay. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Fry, the audio and voice is addressed in section G there, that when I talked to our clerk, she said it can be set up that any messages to her office, she will be able to send to her own email, sort of like Director Miller has, that she would easily just be able to hit play on her computer and play it for us there. And it also had writers of length, disqualifications, and content.
Okay, that sounds, so that would eliminate what Mr. Medges said about being in Friday. We wouldn't have to do that. You could extend it past Friday, correct? And still have it read voicemail Monday afternoon?
As long as the president had time to assign when and where it should be read. If we have a call that has nothing to do with the legislative agenda, he couldn't assign the call for something about a fire hydrant, so to speak.
Well, Mr. Majors, what do you think of that one? Since the voicemail, you still rather have it on Friday?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. You could go with that with the Monday, but like Mr. Hyde had said, it has to pertain to the subject matter on the legislative night. So, a lot of that could be mute because it wouldn't pertain. They couldn't read it till the next week anyway.
Okay.
Or play it if it was audio.
Right.
Mr. DeBevick?
Chair. So I guess my concern is that still limiting, because they could, yes, it's a legislative evening, but if Mr. Surgeon wanted to come and discuss this piece of legislation, it wasn't on the agenda this evening. And safety meets every other week, and it only meets on legislative, so that he could never discuss it. He could never comment. I guess I feel like that the comments should be assigned to the proper committee for discussion. If we truly want to have a dialogue with the residents, I feel like limiting it. I understand limiting it via the rules for legislative and committee of the whole if you're addressing council as a whole, but if you're addressing a committee or a topic that's being discussed in a committee, what we are proposing is very limited.
Yeah.
Joyce, Mrs. Colburn?
Yeah, I think we have to have it where they can send messages right up, but they don't have to be read during the legislative or committee of the whole. But we as council people need to know if it's pertaining to our committee. And that could be done at the last minute. So what he's proposing on the emails for what, Laura?
Yeah, Laura.
I see Laura waiting.
No,
Either way, what I was going to say is once the emails come in and I read which committee they go to, I could immediately forward them to the committee members.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something we need to do.
But it wouldn't be a dialogue. I see what you're saying. It wouldn't be a dialogue. But I could immediately send those emails straight to I don't know,
utilities.
You if it has something to do with utilities. I would automatically forward it right away to you, Carol and Carla. Or I could just forward it to all of council and direct it to utilities committee.
Because we do need that part, but what's read before legislative or committee of the whole has to stick with our original rules that we've always had for council.
Okay.
Right? Is that right, Mr. Medges?
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah. So people could continue to send messages, but they won't be read unless they are pertaining to those two things.
Okay.
But we will get our messages.
Okay, well,
and that's what you're trying to get through, right, Thomas?
Right.
What I'm trying to get through is that the subject matters of any email, voice recording or audio recordings go to the proper places at the proper times. Sometimes in a committee of the whole meeting, somebody may want something read that they sent in complaining about a street. Well, that should be read in the streets committee for discussion, not just open air. This isn't basically, I'm not trying to make that. We got to avoid making this the festive miracle of the airing of grievances. We actually have to be able to talk about what the person is asking or what the person is stating. If it's only read before a committee of the whole or legislative, we just sit there silent, take it, and we don't rebut. So that doesn't get answers for anything. That's why I think it's the most important that between the clerk and the president when they receive emails or voice recordings, that they can assign it properly, and there's some sort of order and decorum to who and when it's read.
Okay. Well, back to the person that sent the email that may have want to attend the meeting. How would that work?
That's going to be the next step. Once we get something in there that we can address where any medium is going, then we can set up the virtual podium, so to speak.
Okay.
So I will tell you that today, this morning I called Mr. Medges, and I didn't feel comfortable answering questions that other council members may have had for Mr. Surgeon. And so I asked him if it would be appropriate for me to invite him to our meeting this evening. And he told me yes. And then I sent an email to Laura, and she kindly invited him. So I think that if there is somebody that is really bothering one of us, or we feel like they really want to provide input on a particular topic that's going to occur in a meeting, we could, until we get something in place, kind of set up that ability to contact council president and say, listen, this person, is interested in attending the safety committee meeting.
Okay.
They want to plead their case.
Right.
Correct. And that, again, that can be the next step, but I do believe the first step is with the mediums that we have currently with emails and voice, we need to get that set in stone and then keep building upon that.
Appreciate it.
If times don't work for the president and the clerk, we can always change that.
Thank you. We can't call for this tonight though, can we?
Being that it's rules, it's council rules and not an ordinance or resolution. According to what Mrs. Fox and Director Miller have told me, we could vote on it any legislative meeting. If it was preferred, I can rework it, get with Mr. Greer, take any suggestions, and get the virtual podium worked in for 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay. So we'll go for that. So we're not gonna be able to call for it at the legislative meeting.
If we feel more comfortable with making sure it's the total package instead of piecing it, we would wait for 2 more weeks.
Okay. Well, I'm in favor of waiting 2 more weeks for that. Just in case
That would also
somebody
give us time to meet with the clerk and President Medges to solidify times and hammer everything down so that we have one package and put it forth.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Heidig. Do we have any more miscellaneous on this? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Chairman?
Yes, sir. Mr. Heidig.
I emailed you previously in the week that if it's with your blessing, I would like to also collect any suggestions from the council rules. Last time they were revisited was about 5.5 years ago.
Yeah.
We have a charter review commission every 4 years or 5 years, excuse me. But what we don't have is basically set in stone when we review our own rules. And with changing times, perhaps it's time we look at certain things. And I would, with your blessing, love to collect them, make a bullet point presentation to give to you so that everything is anonymous and we can go through things one by one. For example, and I was approached that an ad hoc committee meeting once a month, generically titled building committee, might be a good thing that could give the building commissioner and the mayor kind of a platform to come update us on things, give us word from the ground. This committee would be ad hoc and by no way call for legislation, but if matters were brought to us, it would be to the planning committee that actually does handle the building department. But it's ideas like that that maybe we need to revisit, and I would like to give the month of March to get any submissions to, in April, we could revisit things again.
Okay. That's a good idea. Do we have anything else? Hearing none, I have a motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion adjourned.
I will
Thank
second
you,
that.
Mr. Gaber. We're adjourned at 7:36. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next up is city utilities with Mrs. Colburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City utilities, I'd like to call city utilities to order. It's Monday, February 22nd. All members are present virtually. We have no requests for legislation. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, they did start that utility work over on Lincoln area on my side of town. Do we have any information on that, like the time frame, what is actually being done? I know
that is, the gas company is going to be doing that.
Yep.
Work, and they do it when they're ready.
If I may, they were out there in full force today when I dropped your mail off, Mr. Greer.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been outside, so I'm like a vampire. But
yeah.
So I guess I did want to add, Mr. Tracy has confirmed this, but a lot of the residents were just concerned because it was cold, that the gas lines were going to be worked on, and council members that have been around for a while probably know this, but the gas company, I guess, they need to shut the gas off at some point in order to make the connection, and then they schedule it with the homeowner. So I just wanted to make that known, I guess, again publicly, because that was the biggest concern that I was having, that I was hearing back for some residents. Why would they do it in the wintertime? The inconvenience, I guess, is something part of life, dealing with that, but it was that they were just concerned that there was gas project going on, that they wouldn't have any gas.
They do schedule, and they do let you know when they're turning it off and how long it'll be off. They did that on our side a couple of years ago. So, is there anything else from the committee? Mr. Tracy?
I guess I'm not on the committee, but
well, you are.
I just expand a little bit on what Councilman Greer was speaking about. It's a pipeline replacement project. We've been doing a lot of them in the area. They're replacing gas mains and in some cases the gas service. Most of the gas services will be replaced to the gas meter, which depends on the location of the meter, if it's next to the house or if it's near the right-of-way. And that determines whether they work outside of the right-of-way or into private property as well. But still different than the water distribution side of things. Gas companies are required to replace those services up to the meter next to the house, just obviously because of the dangers that could come along with not doing that properly. So they will restore everything, after it's all done to the same condition or better. The project will likely last into the spring. It'll be 2 or 3 months long. Obviously, any restoration can't be done until when the weather is right for that. So they've been very good working with the city and our inspectors. They're out there periodically throughout the day and sometimes on the weekends. And yes, we do bill for our time on the weekends. Actually, we bill for any of our time out there. There are some types of conflicts at times. We've worked really well with them. They work well with us. We've worked with this contractor before. They're good contractors, so I expect it to go fairly smoothly. They won't leave anyone out in the cold without any heat. They make sure they coordinate and schedule any of the service tie-ins and turnovers with the property that is going to be tied on. So I expect it to be somewhat seamless, other than the inconvenience that comes along with it. So there's my little summary of the events going on over there. I did communicate that, I think, to Mr. Greer via email. He had questioned me about it, and I felt like it was a fairly decent summary, but that's pretty much what I told him last week or so.
Thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Greer?
Thanks, Chair. Greg, you mentioned that it was going to go into spring. Is the project going to be expanding, like snaking through the streets, or is it what we're looking at now? Because I do know that the green markers are out everywhere. They're not just where they're currently working at right now.
So the green markers they're part of the project, but there should be green, there should be blue, there should be orange, there should be yellow, there should be pink right-of-way stakes. There's going to be lots of marks out there. The marks are going to be wherever they call the project in. So they could call the project in the whole east side of Barberton if they wanted to. It doesn't actually mean that the work is going to be done in that area. Typically, they try to keep it condensed to the area that they're working in, to the limits of the work area. But there may be marks outside of the work area. It just depends on how they call in the utilities marks.
I got you. So the work area, we're not to expect this to like move down one more street, is what I'm saying. It's where it's currently at now.
I sent an overview aerial out on our website and I think on Facebook early last week sometime. That has kind of the project limits in an aerial view. It should be
just like an L.
Fairly accurate. I mean, it's not going to be exact. They just did it on Google Earth. So
okay.
Everything should be done real close to those limits. And unless they come across something they're unaware of and they have to, expand the project slightly. But they've already done work, a lot of work over there. About 2 or 3 years ago, they did everything kind of northeast of that area. They did about 10,000 feet in that area. And then next year, they're doing another one kind of over towards Robinson, 7th Street, Northeast, Ford, Baird, over in Councilwoman Angela's ward. So that'll be coming next year.
So thank you, Mr. Tracy.
You're welcome.
Do we have anything else? Any other miscellaneous discussions for utilities? I don't see any other hands, so do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Fry first and Carla second. Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:45.
Okay, last but not least is finance and personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and personnel is meeting this evening, Monday, February 22nd, 2021. The time is 7:45. We are meeting virtually. All members of the committee, as well as all members of council and guests as noted on my agenda sheet, are present. We have a couple of pieces of legislation on the agenda for this evening. The first is ordinance number 11, 2020, amendment to civil service rules. We are going to only have one reading on this particular piece of legislation unless we have some objections, because we are in the planning stages for some entry level testing in the very near future. So we would like to have this up and running. We have some retirements coming in the police department and also have had some promotions, and we are going to have to replace some officers. We're going to need new officers. So does anybody have any objections to just going the one reading tonight?
I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay, great. All right, the second piece of legislation that we are going to hear tonight, because it's going to be the first reading, is ordinance number 12-2020 titled Operating and Capital Budget. We will be going to discuss the budget after tonight's meeting. And as we had said previously, this will go 3 readings. I received a letter from Mr. Flaker regarding 6 emergency note ordinances. And the letter is rather lengthy. So rather than going into it tonight, because we've gone over so much and we still have a budget meeting and we still have a legislative meeting, I'm going to save reading the letter and discussing that for next week's meeting. Do I have any miscellaneous discussion for finance? Mrs. DeBevick?
I have a question regarding a piece of legislation that we will be voting on this evening, but it's not from finance, but we did not have the planning commission or the planning meeting this evening. Should I address it here, or should I wait? Should we adjourn and I address it before we start the legislative meeting?
I'll leave that to the president to decide.
What piece of legislation did you need to talk about?
I just had a question about the piece of legislation to enter into agreement with Summit County Department of Building Standards to allow county inspectors to serve as backup inspectors to conduct electrical, plumbing, and building inspections.
Okay, we'll wait till we bring that up during the meeting, because it's only going to be a couple minutes.
During, well, I guess I want to. I believe maybe Mr. Eddie Lawson is here from OFSME as well, so I don't know if he's able to speak during the legislative meeting or not.
All right, just go for it then.
So I'm just wondering if the part regarding building inspections, I first of all, I appreciate Mr. Tracy's email to all of us. If the building inspections portion, we could potentially be in violation of the written contract with AFSCME, primarily because we aren't spelling out what backup is. It's pretty generic terms. I understand with the electrical and plumbing, the explanation, although that's not the explanation in the ordinance. It just says backup. I'm particularly concerned with building inspections because we do have building inspectors. So I don't know if we are in violation, including building inspections or not.
Yeah, we're not in violation of the AFSCME collective bargaining agreement. I spoke with Mr. Lawson about that.
Okay.
I would like to add to piggyback on that and say that I don't think that we would have a problem with that, because we're talking about electrical inspectors and we're talking about plumbing inspectors. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tracy, but we don't even have an electrical inspector at the present time, do we?
We haven't for at least 6 years.
Right. So, you're not taking work away from any of the AFSCME members. But anyway, if you have any other questions for Mr. Tracy, go ahead and ask before we get to the point of voting.
So my concern
can I say something?
Chair, I think Mr. Lawson is addressing you.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
My question.
I'm sorry. We're in finance. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
Thanks, Carol. My question with this is, and I have talked to Mr. Tracy, is not with the plumbing or the electrical. That's understood. My questioning is having the building included in that, and what the language would be as backup. I understand with COVID and the things that come with that, but my understanding is this isn't just pertaining to COVID. So any building inspections that would be done outside of electrical or plumbing, unless there was some dire emergency, would be a violation of the contract if it was done by Summit County or anyone else. That would be my question, is the building portion. Thank you.
Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Mrs. Fry.
From what I'm reading, I think the backup services were for the chief building official. Correct, Mr. Tracy? Chime in.
So the backup services extend to the building and the building inspections, not property maintenance or anything. So we have one inspector who serves as a building inspector, and that inspector goes out and inspects things that are required to be inspected by the Board of Building Standards. So if for some reason our one inspector who does residential inspections is unable to do that, we wouldn't have to stop our obligations with the Board of Building Standards to keep continuing on with our residential building inspections. It also covers commercial building inspections, which right now the only individual that can do commercial building inspections in the city is the building commissioner. We do have some independent contractors that do the plumbing and electrical, and they're also qualified to do residential and building inspections. However, they don't unless they're only commercial, because we don't have another qualified commercial individual in-house.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Lawson?
Not exactly, but I'll take that up with the mayor and Mr. Tracy that I may have with this.
All right, thank you. Okay, do I have any other miscellaneous discussion for this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevick, motion made by Carla DeBevick and seconded by...
I will second it, Mrs. Fry.
Angeloff. Okay, and we are adjourned at 7:54 p.m. Thank you all.
Okay, we're running late and we're going to be here later anyway. So let's just get going with this meeting, a regular legislative meeting. Okay.
Mr. Medges,
Yes?
can you give me a second? I have to log back on, please.
Okay.
I've been using my phone. 1 second, please.
Okay.
Oh, brother.
On.
Everybody ready? Everybody here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is a regular legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021. It is 7:56 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mrs. Angela. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening, we ask your blessings on the people who have been called to lead the community in which they live, work, and play. Lord, may we speak out when it is time to speak out, and listen patiently and respectfully when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of our community. Lord, we pray for those who are hurting and lonely, ill and hungry, those who are concerned about what may happen next. We pray to bring healing and strength to our country, community, and to our families. Grant us peace as we trust in you. Amen.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
And Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, February 8th, 2021, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting on Monday, February 8th, 2021.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, February 8th, 2021 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Petitions and claims.
There are none.
Matters requested.
They've all been emailed.
Citizens addressing council.
There are none.
Okay. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 11-2021 presented by Mrs. Fry. Title, Amendment of Civil Service Rules. An ordinance amending ordinance number 42-2020 to give the Barberton Civil Service Commission the flexibility in the testing process by allowing electronic applications and examinations and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Mrs. Fry.
You're muted, Carol.
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff. Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 11-2021.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 11-2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff. Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Ordinance number 12-2021 presented by Mrs. Fry. 2021 operating and capital budget. An ordinance adopting a budget for various funds of the city of Barberton for the period of January 1st, 2021, and providing for the administration thereof and declaring it an emergency. Okay. Ordinance number 13-2021, presented by Mrs. Angeloff. To enter into agreement with the County Department of Building Standards. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement with the Summit County Department of Building Standards to allow county inspectors to serve as backup inspectors to conduct electrical, plumbing, and building inspections and declaring it an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
No, it's Mrs.
Angela. Thank you, Mr. President.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick, you're second on that?
No, Joyce is.
Joyce?
I am.
Okay. I've got it wrong on my paper here. Go ahead, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second that motion for suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Angeloff and second by Mrs. Coburn to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Jaber.
No.
Mrs. DeBevick.
No.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
No.
Mr. Greer.
No.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Okay, that's 4-4. I vote yes on that. Okay, motion to adopt. Mrs. Angeloff.
I move that ordinance number 13-2021 be adopted as presented.
And Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Angeloff and second by Mrs. Coburn to adopt ordinance number 13-2021. Are there any remarks? Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be voting no on this evening because while I understand the need for the electrical and plumbing, I am concerned about building inspections being included and the generic language ACA. So for that reason, I will be voting no.
Any other remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. President?
Mr. Medley, Mr.
Heidick. I
Heidick
can't
has
see
his
you.
hand up.
Mr. Heidick.
Tracy.
Mr. President, am I there?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What was the count on suspension?
It was 4-4, then I broke it. That's just suspension. That's not the adoption.
Right. If I'm reading correctly, section 5.10 legislative procedure, the last sentence or last paragraph says, every resolution or ordinance shall be read 3 different regular council unless council votes to suspend the rule requiring separate readings, which unless directed by a majority vote of the council. Such suspension of the rule shall require the affirmative vote of 6 members if council members are all present.
Okay, is that for suspension?
Yes.
Okay, then we can't go on with this.
This is why I call Mr. Heidick the book. This guy knows every rule.
I just want to make clear that if I'm reading correctly, now I may not be, but according to the charter, it looks like it says 6 of 8 if full council is present needed for suspension.
You're right. If it's an emergency, it has to be has to have 6 votes. I wasn't sure if that was for just the adoption.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So we don't suspend, but we read it again.
My new contact for you, Mr. Bebby, is Mr. Book. That's it. My phone.
So this, let me see something here. Hang on. This would have to go 3 readings in there for that to pass at that vote.
Mr.
Yep.
Tracy had something to say.
Mr. Tracy?
No, it's fine now. I mean, if it goes 3 readings, I can talk to the union leadership.
Okay, well, we can take this 3 readings.
Okay.
That's up to Mrs. Angeloff.
We can't hear you, Mrs. Angeloff.
We can now, we have to represent it.
So we can.
Can we do this now, or does this have to be represented?
Well, you can read it again. It doesn't need to be represented. I don't think so.
Mr. Heidick, does it need to be presented, Mr. Heidick?
I believe we're just did first reading and we can.
Right, that's exactly right.
So
we could just take this first reading.
It'll just be first reading.
So this ends the
I just
first.
wish that questions would come up in the planning commission meeting, or else it could be emailed to me. So we don't stumble across this stuff when we're having legislation. So I really appreciate if somebody had a question in a week's time, they could have addressed it to me. It would have given me some time to acknowledge that and then be able to present it to council as 3 readings. So I would appreciate if that would happen.
With all due respect, I don't have.
We'll go 3 readings on it.
That's why the charter's in place for 3 readings.
We'll go 3 readings, Mr. President.
Okay. Okay, that's the end of the first reading. Second readings of ordinances and resolutions.
There are none.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
There are none.
Appointments.
There are none.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Okay, communication from the mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. A few updates here. Let me get to my notes. A few stormwater updates. 14th, 15th, well, 14th Street offers have been made to 14 out of the 15 properties. So waiting to hear back on that, but that's moving nicely. 15th Street and Arthur, I'm going to wait. They're continuing through the process, and that should work through a lot quicker than the 14th Street FEMA project. We've got kind of everything in place already. So moving through those projects. They're calling for a very wet spring. And if you see the weather, last few weeks, you've had a little bit of everything from rain today to freezing temperatures to snow to sleet. and sometimes a few weather patterns at the same time. So they're expecting a lot of urban flooding throughout the entire country and a very wet spring throughout this entire northern part of Ohio. So this is a concern not just for us, but for many, many communities. As you may have heard the other week, Summit Art Space is consolidating their services. And we've been working with the artist in the art center here in Barberton and others to keep the art center growing and thriving and expanding. So great things happening, but more information to come soon. In terms of COVID, numbers are, steady on the cases. Throughout the country, we did reach over 500,000 deaths associated with COVID, which was sad to see. And they're continuing to grow. Even though the cases are kind of steady or plateaued out a little bit, the deaths continue to rise. Still working on stimulus package down in DC, still working with getting vaccines, and the county has come out with kind of a lottery system moving forward on the dispensing of the vaccine. So I think I understand their concept. I don't know if that's if I agree with it, but they're still trying to get all the information out and as much vaccine as possible. So more information on that front as well. But we're keeping tabs on all that. I'm also looking at the news that broke today about Goodyear purchasing Cooper Tire. That's going to take quite a bit of time to actually go through and for them to consolidate their operations or whatever their plan is. So we're trying to get a handle on that. Obviously, we don't have either facility in Barberton, but Goodyear in Akron is purchasing Cooper, which is also in Ohio. So what does this mean for the greater Akron area? Is there going to be any relocation of facilities or jobs to this area? Are there going to be any ancillary businesses that are brought on to this area because of that purchase? Any job growth? This moves Goodyear into the number 3rd spot worldwide for tire production. So may not directly include the city of Barberton, but it could definitely have an impact on our community. So making sure that we stay abreast of all the information as that comes about. Other than that, I received some questions from on the budget from Councilwoman Angeloff, Councilwoman Fry, Councilman Griffin. Talked to Mr. Heidick today, Councilman Heidick. Not so much on the budget initially, but he did have some questions, or he emailed me also before council. So I got those and want to get those out to council. So there may, based on tonight's conversation, there may be some replication of questions, but I'll still send them out. So that's about all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the body? Okay, I have something to say. On that order.
Councilor Angeloff.
Go ahead, Mr. President.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead,
You're
Mr.
up.
President.
Do you have anything to say?
I just wanted to direct this question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just want to direct this question to Mr. Greer regarding the chickens. If you have any information that you can forward on, I've been inundated with phone calls and emails and did not know anything about this until I saw it in print. It was brought to my attention that somebody saw it on Facebook. And so I've got some of my constituents in my ward that aren't very happy right now. And I think you said in the paper that you were going to put it together and get it tested in March. But I just don't know how to answer my constituents on what you're doing. So if you can give me an outline of what you're looking at or what you're doing or what you're proposing. A lot of the residents that I had talked to were not happy with this because the city is in financial economic situation right now, and they feel who's going to take and actually the building department, are they going to look at this? Are they going to monitor this? Is there a fee? There's a lot of questions that was brought up to me that I had no answer for. So I'd appreciate it if you can even an outline to all of council, so all of us are on the same page, so we don't have to say, I know nothing about this.
Yeah, sure. It's just so you know, it's a working thing. It's nothing presented. I've been working with countless residents that are for it.
And you put it in the beacon. When you plaster it in the beacon and on Facebook, I don't know what to tell
with all
these
due
people.
respect, I didn't plaster it
I
in
know
the
nothing
beacon.
about it.
They covered the story. I wrote about it to my constituents on Facebook to get feedback. Overwhelming feedback, none of that. But I will gladly send out what I have, and it's just a working copy. I've met with the mayor about it, got his initial take on it, and I'll share it with the rest of council. I'll be glad to, so you guys are not.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Menges, Mr. Tracy also had something.
Go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to, in regards to the ordinance with the backup inspections, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that in the language in the inspection agreement, the actual word backup was not in the original agreement. I actually emailed the county and had conversation with them back and forth to please add that so that everyone knew that it was strictly a last resort for us to keep compliant with the Board of Building Standards. This by no means would affect anything with any union employees. In the same paragraph, it says request by agency. We have to make the request to have these inspections done by the county. So if the building department portion of it is a little too vague for some people, I can easily work that out with the union leadership to let them know when I'm requesting a building inspection to be done by a Summit County employee. It would be probably very rare, hopefully never. We've gone through instances during COVID where we've had one person in the department and we had to try to do video inspections and try to do things to make sure we're so compliant with the Board of Building Standards. So it's very important for us to have redundancy and hoping that we never have to use it because we do have the independent contractors and whatnot, but it is a very important part of just meeting our obligations for having a building department and, overseeing two different communities within the county. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. And I'll be covering that stuff with the union leadership as well. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Heidick has his hand up.
Go for it, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. I would truly appreciate that because my concern was the unnecessary grievances being filed against the city, whereas if we were ruled against, we're paying twice. So I appreciate your work going into that.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. I just to let you know, I've been with the city now for over 6 years, and no grievances in my time period have ever resulted in any payout by the city, however you want to call it. It hasn't resulted in any expenses per a grievance per se. So we have a very good track record. I know the contract very well, probably more so than anyone on the call except for Mr. Lawson and Director Doherty. So I'm pretty confident in the language, and I feel like that we are able to work through these things to make sure that everything works out the best for the city and the union employees.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Anybody else? With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:22. All right, we'll take a couple minutes and then we'll get into the finance.
Mr.
budget
President,
review.
just so you know, the live stream is going, or do you want to start a new live stream for this?
72.
Just keep it going.
Okay.
Mayor Judge? Mayor Judge? Nobody listens to me. Mayor Judge?
For those just joining the live stream, we are getting ready to head into the workshop, budget workshop, basically talking about the budget. You can also follow along if you email jflaker at cityofbarberton.com.
Yes, can I get the lo mein, broccoli and chicken, please?
Report
Yes. Thank you.
right now.
Extra hot and spicy, yeah.
I just get done saying how hungry I am and he orders Chinese. How fair is that?
All right.
I just turned my oven on. That's what I was doing.
Okay. Is everybody back yet?
I'm here.
I'm here.
There's 4.
I'm here.
Mr. Jaber back?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I think we're all back.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the council members who had sent me questions, and I will get those compiled together. And I've responded to them, but I will compile those and send them out to all of council. I thought, at first I want to preference this year's budget as being kind of, when you can do comparisons, it's going to be wacky. What was budgeted in 2020, and then what was actually spent in 2020 versus what's budgeted in 2021 is just going to be all over the place. So whether it's, and I put this in an email to council earlier today, what's going to be in the budget for trainings and salaries, in some cases, projects and programs is going to be all over the place. It's just, and everyone's budget is like this, every community. So I thought it'd be best to have a few departments each week go through their budget, kind of explain things and talk about, why there's a discrepancy or an increase or decrease. Talk about unfunded mandates or different changes that they've had to come across. And this might answer a lot of questions that council has for that individual department. And then we can obviously continue with more questions. I know that it's already 8:30, so we're a little late, but we'll go through as much as everyone can today. But we've already got another scheduled meeting for next Monday, immediately following council. So I was going to have our police chief go through his budget and just kind of highlight some of the things. And then we can go into the fire department. And then we've got a few others scheduled if time allows. So I'll go ahead and turn that over to Chief Morber.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm looking at page 59 of 173 from the budget stuff. So for 0.0 reference.
Thanks for the page number. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm feeling it.
Good, Craig? Council President, sorry.
Go for it.
All right. So obviously, personnel is our biggest expenditure. So there's wages. Now let's say, what the heck? Well, look at the actual 2020. Well, that was because CARES Act money. So I can tell you before the CARES Act money was applied to our budget, we were on track to meet our budget last year. So Lieutenant White and Lieutenant Dawson worked very hard at, we watch all the time. So we had a 2% raise per contract this year, and that's reflected in there. So really,
Chief Morber?
Yes, Mayor.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just hope everyone appreciates, you may not know the number of changes that we all had to make with CARES Act money, because the feds would come out and say, here's CARES Act money, you can use it for this. And then they'd come back and say, wait a minute, you can only use it for X, Y, and Z. And then they'd come back and change their policy again. And so when we talk about CARES Act money, there's been a lot of changes over the last year on how that could be used, and sometimes daily. So I just want everyone to know that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chief.
All right. So that's wages. Administrative assistant, we have one of those. That's hers. We don't have dispatchers anymore, so those are jailer wages. So those are, for the year that has to pay for the jailers. So it's one person every hour of every day. Communication coordinator, we don't have that job anymore. Clerk secretary. Jailer reserve wages. Those would be reserve wages to be able to pay for reserve officers as much as we could, see how we can use them. We use them to supplement, not supplant full-timers. We always, we're cognizant of the contract, and that's how we use them. So we would never go over in that. Clerk secretary, we don't have a DB clerk. We haven't had one for over about a year now. So ideally we want to get one for the second half of the year. So that's what that would be for. So we have at least 2 admin people here, or administrative assistant type of folks, because we just have one now, and Jackie does a fine job. Then she gets hit hard every day on a lot of stuff. Diversion specialist, that's funded through a grant, so that we pay a part-time person, and an additional one who helps with it on that. Some of that other stuff was grant related. Healthcare, that's all the rates that the city has. Medicare, that's X amount of your wages and salary. So down to retired employee benefits, those have been going down over time. So retirees before a certain point can get some stuff reimbursed. That ended in around 2016, 2015. About time, I think Officer Hudak was the last one that is covered under that, get reimbursed so much. That's contractual. Clothing allowance, that's contractual. Gym membership reimbursements, that's contractual. And that's personnel. Operations and maintenance, they're pretty self-explanatory on those. Nothing really big increase on any of them that I can see. I mean, the 2020 actuals, the budgeted, one of the big items in here, telephone, that's where every department puts in so much, for the phone systems and ITS type of stuff. Bulletproof vest replacements down there, that's a reimbursement grant, so we don't pay that. Back on, we have a deal with the schools on the school crossing. So we administer the program, we hire them, city employees, but they reimburse us for their costs. So we work in that partnership. So that's a good deal. Office supplies, you know what those are. Equipment maintenance contracts. That did go up. Big part of that, largest part of that is taser and body cam stuff. So body cam's not cheap, but we've had it for a number of years. And, some uniform stuff, some bike patrol stuff, gas and oil. Jail operations, we get some of that reimbursed from partner communities. Not all of it though, because like I said, we do the biggest part of that. So, and then on page 61, that next page, then we have 2 cruisers budgeted for this year as well. And some money to try to equip them. Questions? Yes, Carla. Sorry, woman developing. You're muted. I'm sorry. I'm missing you.
Right. Call me Carla. So I just wanted to. Oh, sorry. It's after 8 o'clock, and my brain is where it was the jailers. Okay, here it is. Dispatch and jailers. 2020, we had budgeted $161,000, and then for actual, we had 0. Was that because of the CARES Act money?
That would be part of it. The part of it too was to try to separate out the jailers from the reserve. They used to be all put together. So. Okay.
I'm just curious why it showed no expenditure for 2020.
Right, because we're trying to, every now and then, your funds start a certain way. They're labeled a certain way. And as time goes by, they don't get changed to maybe accurately show and reflect what all comes out of that fund. I mean, you can't have a fund that's, I guess 3 pages long, a name, but that's how we, Mr. Flaker, when we go through the budget process with the safety director, this is more reflective of where we're at.
Okay. So we did not pay jailer wages then last year?
We did. Those would have been in the 1116 account. The actual 176,742.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
So, okay, I have one more question then.
Sure.
With that, sorry.
That's okay.
With that, then, is that why we have a decrease in, so we have budgeted in jailer wages for 2021, 164,000. And in the 116 fund, 97,000, where last year for 2020 we spent 176,000. Is that just again just addressing that?
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't see us. I mean, knowing how we are this year, we won't spend that total.
Thank you. That's all.
Part of those are reimbursements too. So, when we use people for something else, then we get some of that back. Other departments chargebacks internal.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to email me on the budget, the safety director or the mayor. So we're all on the same page, and I yield my time back to the fire chief.
Thank you, Chief. We'll go ahead to Chief Persley to talk about the fire budget.
Okay, everybody. If you go to page 62, very similar to Chief Morber's budget, you'll see the top line of firefighter wages. You'll notice that we were budgeted for $3.7 million. We actually spent 1.9. That was due to the CARES Act funding. Without the CARES Act funding, we were still on course to come in at approximately 8% under budget. We too have an administrative assistant, and then all the line items under that are basically the benefit package: your pension, your medical, your health care, so on and so forth. So if you want to turn the page, we'll go into operations and maintenance. And excuse me. How I put this together, I did a 5-year look back on all of these funds and figured the average increase each year. So that's kind of what I did to come up with my final number, as well as add on projects that I knew we were going to have to try and accomplish this year, such as we have a number of newly promoted officers that we're going to have to get trained. We're hoping to hire another 3 to 4 firefighters to fill our vacancies. So there'll be some internal training there. The other big line items I'll just kind of direct your attention to: repair and maintenance went up, and that is due to asphalt repairs that we have to make at both stations. I believe Station 2 on State Street is the worst. The other is the annual service agreements. You'll see some increases there. We are transitioning from paper to an electronic scheduling and reporting system. The scheduling side of it is running very well. Everybody's very happy with it. We're still working with finance to try and tailor our report into something that they can use. And then finally, we have in there to replace a couple of our vehicles, one being the shift commander vehicle, and the other one is either going to be the fire marshal's van or the safety officer's Jeep. And that's it, kind of in a nutshell. If you have any questions.
Chief, do you want to go into the fire levy budget? 206? I don't have a page. Page 88. 87, sorry.
So what the mayor is referring to is we do have a capital improvement levy. I'm still getting to the page, I'm sorry. So the total revenue projected for that is $255,000 for this year. However, we have several items that are coming out of that. We still have a lease payment on an ambulance that we're paying, and we're also still paying for Station 2. Looking into 2021, working with Jeremy Flaker, we want to try and we need to replace our ladder truck. And to give you an idea how much a ladder truck costs, it's anywhere between $900,000 upwards to $1.4 million. There is a grant that we are trying to do. So any additional money that is in that fire levy is going to have to go towards our match. And you figure a 10% match on $1 million, I need to match it with 100. So we're trying to keep that capital where it's at in hopes we get the ladder truck grant and get that replaced as well next year. Mayor, is that what you wanted me to kind of cover, or is there something I missed?
No, great job. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Chief Persley?
All right. Well, if something comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out. Be happy to walk you through the numbers or show you whatever information you need. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we want to go into, Beth, are you ready? We could do civil service, HR, and safety director.
Yes, sir, I can do that. So I'll start with civil service. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Page 49 of 173. I'm gonna go over the highlights of what the biggest change, and that would be under professional services, under operations and maintenance. If you go back up to the member salary, that's set by ordinance. That's the civil service commission members or paid commission members. The secretary salary, that's a portion of the HR coordinator salary that is paid out of civil service. And as both chiefs mentioned, the rest at the top of the page under personal services is your benefit package to the employees. So the biggest change, as I see it here, is under professional services. And so for experience, I asked Jamie to do the civil service budget, and she did a nice job. And what she did is she removed our professional services that we were taking out of HR and put it where it should be, which is in civil service. So that would be for testing for employees or new hires, new candidates. It would also be for drug testing for new candidates, open online, which is our background investigations. So although the budget may have gone up slightly, it's kind of a misnomer. It hasn't gone up 368% or whatever it says there. It just came from HR put into civil service where it should be. Do we have any other questions from civil service? If none, I'll move on to safety. At the top half, a portion of the safety director's salary comes out of the safety budget, and then the rest are the usual fringe benefits, or not just fringe, but the actual, not just benefits either, but it would be OPERS and severance pay, workers' compensation, that kind of thing. So that's our fair share out of the safety budget. Under operations and maintenance, the largest is the Swisscom dispatch contract, and that is that represents Barberton's share of the contract, rather.
What page is that, Beth?
What page? I'm sorry, 52. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Swisscom IT services went up, but they just hired a new person. I'm not sure. Maybe Jeremy's in a better position to answer this, but I believe it could be because they hired a second IT person. So that could be the increase in our cost. I'm not positive, but that did go up. It appears by an increase of 43%. Do we have any other questions from safety?
Beth, I have a question.
Yes.
The $20,000, the Summit Emergency Service that had gone up, is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I called the mayor this evening. I need to talk to Jeremy. To be honest with you, to be fair, I don't know the answer to that question. I have to find out what that is exactly for. It's obviously I believe a Summit County cost, I think, but I just don't know what that 20 grand represents, and I can find out and let everyone know.
Thank you.
Hey, Beth, I think that's an estimated cost for emergency management services through Summit County.
Okay,
But
so
I'll
it's an
confirm
EMA
that.
fee. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds like it's an EMA fee.
I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more questions, I can move on to page 53, which was going to be the HR budget. I don't think at the top half you're going to see any big changes, nothing major. If you have any questions about the top half, I'll be glad to answer them. The next one down that kind of stands out for everyone, I'm sure, would be the professional services. So in 2021, we've already had one promotional exam. We will have another that was in fire. We're going to have another in police, and then we're going to have new hires in police, fire, clerk, and labor positions. Labor will have another test, and clerks probably will have another test. So that would explain that, plus the negotiations of all 4 union contracts. So there's, out of HR professional services, we pay for labor attorneys during negotiations, open online again, which is our background checks, drug testing, pre-employment testing, and that takes in polygraph examinations, medical examinations for police and fire. So the testing for police and fire candidates, not including the academic exam, so medical exam, polygraph, and all that goes with medical is $1,500 roughly per candidate. So that's pretty expensive. We pay for that. And also advertising comes out of there for certain jobs. And the biggest expense this year is going to be the 4 negotiations, and if they should go to if any one of them go to arbitration, that's a big expense. So we have to gear up for that as well.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
This is Mrs. DeBevick. I have a question.
Yes.
When you explained the professional services in human resources, I was, and maybe I misunderstood, but I was under the impression that you said that a lot of those expenses were moved to civil service.
Yes, a lot of them were, but Retzel and Andrus wasn't. Drug testing, some of it comes out of civil service, some of it, and again, we moved over to civil service what we felt should come out of civil service.
Okay.
25,000.
I guess I just misunderstood because I just was taking notes and I wrote down drug testing and open online. Some of the things that then you repeated in human resources, and so I was just curious.
No, you heard correctly, Mrs. DeBevick. You heard me correctly. It just is going to depend where we're at with negotiations, Retzel and with all those bigger expenses, and we can still go to civil service if we need to, or use some of civil service and some out of the other HR professional services.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions on those 3 funds? All right. I don't know how long council wants to stay. We're closing it on 9 p.m. I can go through I don't believe our law director's on the call, but I can go through her budget. That's on page 51. So pretty standard here. Same kind of increases with health and life insurance as you'll see in other budgets. There is obviously a large increase with professional services, which we discussed at council a few weeks ago. Also increases with the public defender. Just a $5,000 increase from the budget of 2020. Again, a lot of these numbers, the courts were shut down for a period of time, and a lot of things of that nature where offset the cost or the revenue in terms of operations and maintenance. So pretty standard here with the law department. Are there any questions with that? All right. Mr. Tracy, I don't know, did you want to go into stormwater or another department?
I'll go wherever you want me to go, Mayor.
Why don't we jump into building? That should be here in the general fund.
Yeah, page 66 is building. All right. Is everybody there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So building department, it's going to look slightly different than it has in the past. First line there, building commissioner. Obviously, we have a full-time building commissioner now. Years past, we had a part-time building commissioner. Last year, we had a part-time and full-time for different portions of the year. As we move down to secretary and building inspector, you'll see some increases there. Those are because that includes the new clerk and the property maintenance inspector, which are dealt across a number of funds now. As you move down farther, you'll see another property maintenance inspector was decreased by about 6,000. There's a number of these positions now that are coming out of 4 or 5 or 6 different funds when you include CDBG, water, sewer, vacant property, or general fund, building, engineering, rental registration, all that kind of stuff. So farther down, you have the health and life insurance. All that stuff is pretty much set by a set percentage. The difference in insurance there, you'll see the actuals versus what was budgeted. It's a big difference. You should see that across the board in most all the budgets because of healthcare holidays. And if there were any employees that were not hired because of COVID. So that'll take us into the operations and maintenance portion of the building and engineering department. Training and travel, now with the full-time building commissioner, we bumped it up. He'll be doing more continuing education for licensure. We also have a number of employees looking to get some new certifications to better our department, give us some more versatility. Professional services, most of the professional service is for our independent contractors that do all of our electrical and plumbing inspections, or the majority of our electrical and plumbing inspections. I think last year we did like $7,000 in electrical inspections. We also use them for other, commercial inspections and whatnot. We would also use that fund for backup building inspector or building commissioner as well. The building demolitions is kind of there for emergency. We had plans last year to do a couple, and then with COVID and the moratorium against evictions, that was kind of held back. So we're looking to execute that again this year. Telephone comes out of many different departments. Advertising is mostly for the public and legal notices for BZA or any other things we have to do for the department as far as public notices. The office supplies, it's pretty standard stuff. Merchant payment fees, a lot of envelopes, stickers for the departments for the permits, and also some backup computer parts. We had to repair some computers and things last year. Everything else is fairly self-explanatory with normal expenditures, and that pretty much makes up that fund. Does anyone have any questions on the personal services or operations and maintenance for the building and engineering department?
Mr. Tracy, this is Justin.
Go ahead.
For the secretary, the new position of a secretary and the new additional building inspector, is that due to the legislation we passed for the increase of fees? And that,
correct.
Is that where you guys are getting that money from there? Okay.
Correct. Anyone else?
I do. So just for clarification, those positions have not been hired yet. They're just budgeted for.
No, they're budgeted for a full year, but obviously we won't be hiring them until we start realizing some of the revenue from the rental registration side. But it's in there so that we can see what it's going to look like down the line. That's not their full. That's partial salaries.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Tracy, I have another question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There was talk about when we raised the fees of a new system that they could use, new software system, or maybe tablets or iPads to make their job easier. Is that reflected in this year's budget? With those?
No, it wouldn't be reflected in the building and engineering budget, and we've already purchased those iPads in 2020. They're set up now, and building has them. But since we haven't started a lot of the new operations yet, because we don't have the new employees and we just got the new ordinance in effect, what it is we already had the software in place. The software can now be used on the tablets so that they can take pictures in the fields, upload all the information in the field to the web-based software, and do everything in the field, write the ticket, and then slap it on the door. We've also looked at printers and the vehicles and things, but that's still something that we're looking into to see if it's necessary to print them or they can just handwrite the tickets.
Okay, and with it not being in the budget this year, we're just assuming that's not going to happen this year anyways.
Well, it's not in the building engineering budget because we already purchased all the tablets, and
I'm sorry.
We have a contract for the software, and it's in the rental registration budget.
Okay.
So that's why you don't see it in the building budget.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? President, I don't know if it's 9 o'clock. I don't know if you want to keep going or if you want to just wait until next week as more questions filter in.
It's up to the people. It's up to the council. If they want to hang in there, we can do it. How much more do you got to go? Why don't we do one more?
We can do a real quick one. Page 44, City Council.
Okay.
Page 44, again, pretty standard. You're going to see some differences when it comes to training and travel. Obviously, some changes at the end of 2020 with the movement of Mrs. Fox up to the law department, yet still kind of working with council. And then the addition of Lori. So you'll see $18,000 for under operation and maintenance, $18,000 for codified ordinances. We spent the last few years updating the entire codified book with all the updates and everything that had happened over the years and getting that in a little more friendlier to read way. So $18,000 to continue that moving forward and getting those codified ordinances in the book and online. Everything else is pretty standard between postage and telephone and all those things. Personnel services, council salaries are set. Clerk salary has gone down because of that split. So just kind of a standard one. Any questions on that? So moving forward, we won't have everybody, like every single budget. You know, there's 173 pages here. We're not going to have every single fund to be kind of run through, but I wanted to do some of the major ones. We can do, you know, utilities, IT, you know, some of the more involved ones that you may have questions, service director. So we can do those next Monday. And I will have out this week a recap of what questions I've received via email from council members and my response. So
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. President. I was looking through the capital improvement plan, and there's $200,000 budgeted from the general lighting fund 501. Are there specific plans for that?
Yes. So we went out for bid earlier this year, late last year, to upgrade the lighting at the foundation fields. So there's 4 fields there, original housing and lights from when the complex went in. So the bids just came back the other week, and it's just under $220,000.
Okay. Do you think that that would be something that we could potentially make foundation for?
I'm sorry, Carly, you were kind of breaking up at the end.
I know. Do you think that that is something that we could potentially entertain a grant request to the Barberton Community Foundation for?
Possibly. They have their spending requirements, and they've changed their granting process. So it's not kind of like on an ongoing basis. They have certain deadlines throughout the year, depending on what bucket of money money comes from. So if we can get the money in or the grant request in, that could help. But this is something we want to kind of get done before the spring tournaments start here next few months.
And then how does that affect the lighting that we are? So we're charging the residents. That's where we're getting this money. How does that affect that money to pay for what it was intended for? Are we still okay?
Yes, it falls within the intention of the use of the fund.
That's not going to require us to increase the fee?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Not for tonight.
All right, I will email out to council later this week the questions I've received and the responses, and then we'll set up some more reviews by department heads next Monday and continue going through this.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. It's been a long night.
Yes.
Bye.
See
Good
ya.
night.
Good night, guys. Sweet dreams. Be safe
See you
driving.
guys.
Good night.